And welcome back. We are joined now by Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, a member of the Armed Services Committee and the Banking Committee, who has outlined new proposals today to end lobbying as we know it and to get corporations out of rulemaking, what she calls an anti-corruption initiative. Senator, welcome. I want to ask you first, because you're straight from a Banking Committee hearing on Russia and sanctions, and we've just heard from Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, that they have caught Russia in the act, Russian intelligence in the act of hacking two conservative Republican think tanks who were going up against Putin and calling for more sanctions.
And this Banking Committee hearing, we're in, because we're responsible on sanctions, asking about the enforcement of sanctions, asking whether or not Treasury is really cooperating and following through, asking how Rusal happened. And Treasury's doing its tap dance about, oh, we're there, we're watching all this, but not so much. When are we going to get our public reports? Oh, not so much, not so much.
So you don't think that they're really taking a hammer to Putin?
No, I don't. And I think, not only do I think that, I think that's what Putin thinks as well. Look, when Donald Trump shows up in Helsinki 4 days after 12 Russian agents have been indicted, stands next to Putin and attacks the U.S. intelligence agencies and law enforcement, and then turns around and gives Putin a big wet kiss. What kind of message do you think Putin takes away from this? He takes away from it that, he'll keep doing what he's doing.
And Reuters interviewed the president yesterday, Jeff Mason and colleagues, and said that he again neglected to blame Russia for the hacking, that he said, well, if it was Russia.
Yeah, if it was Russia. Every intelligence agency has said, we know about the hacking, and this is Russia. And the whole notion that the president keeps doing the back off and the dance and the this and that. And like I said, it's not just the American people who can see that. It's Vladimir Putin who can see it.
Now, the president also told Reuters that he could run the Mueller investigation if he wanted to. He could take it over. Are the Senate Republicans, they're in the majority, are they going to do anything to stop this from happening?
I don't know. What I do know is that Donald Trump cares about exactly one person in America, Donald Trump. And he will do everything he can to protect himself. And that's the direction he keeps heading. And whatever it does to rule of law, to our established agencies, to law enforcement, it's all about Donald Trump for Donald Trump.
Now, he promised to drain the swamp, memorably in the campaign. You came out with an initiative today against lobbyists, against government rulemaking. Why? Why is it so critical to you now?
Look, this is a problem, though. I would like to say this is a problem that only is with Donald Trump. It wouldn't be true. This is a problem that's been going on now for decades. As corporations, billionaires, those who have money, the well-connected and the wealthy, keep making more and more of their influence felt in Washington and tilt one decision after another decision after another decision. So here's how I see it right now. The Trump administration is the most corrupt administration in living memory. This is the moment when people across this country see what's happening. They see Donald Trump himself. What happens? Are the Saudis shoveling money into his pocket every time they take a floor at the Trump Hotel? We don't know. We know he didn't divest himself of these businesses. And throughout his administration, Betsy DeVos heads up the education department. What does she do? She used to invest in a lot of for-profit educational outfits. Now she maintains 3 secret family trusts. The head of EPA, right? One has to go out on a corruption scandal. The new one who comes in is a coal lobbyist. That's where he spent his whole life.
Well, they have new rulemaking today that Jerry Brown says is an outrage against humanity, giving states the role rather than the federal government over pollution when pollution doesn't observe state boundaries.
That's exactly right. But it's what the powerful industry wants, because they know regulation will be less effective. Then they can go to the state governments, they can lobby the state governments, they can make their influence felt there. So what I did is I put together a bill that's not about campaign finance reform. Campaign finance reform is powerfully important, and we need to make changes. We need to overturn Citizens United. But even if we did that tomorrow, there would still be a huge problem in Washington for the influence of money, the influence of the wealthy and the well-connected. So what I did is put together a bill that tries to go straight at the pieces of that goes after lobbying, that goes after the capture of our regulatory agencies, that even talks about the importance of the judiciary in being more forthcoming and following a clear set of ethical rules.
Now, what David Wasserman from the Cook Political Report is projecting is that it would take a victory of some 60 seats of a switch on the House side to offset what he anticipates will be a continued Republican control on the Senate side, or a much rougher patch on the Senate side, and really most likely gridlock. How do you get legislation like yours to go anywhere, given what's happening in this Congress?
Look, this is not legislation that is going to be driven by people who are inside Washington. They already know how the game works, and there are a lot of people who've already figured out that revolving door is how they make their fortune. This is really about legislation that's driven from the outside. You know, I think of it a lot like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This was an idea way back when, following the financial crisis, to say we need a cop on the beat who watches out for consumers, not for the big banks. Now, it was lobbying. Boy, the lobbying dollars poured in. The big banks spent more than $1 million a day for over a year to be able to stop that agency. How do we get it passed into law? It was people across this country who said enough. Democrats and Republicans who said enough. And I think this is the moment on corruption. I think enough people in this country understand they want a government that doesn't work just for the wealthy and well-connected. They want a government that works for the people.
Could this be a 2020 issue for you if you choose to run?
I am running for Senate in Massachusetts, 2018. We've got 77 days to go. I am taking nothing for granted. I just had my 34th town hall.
You're not ruling it out.
What I'm doing is focusing where we need to focus. You know, this always worries me that people want to act like all that matters is what happens every 4 years. No, we are in fights right now. Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. We've got a budget that's going through. And we've got this midterm election in 77 days. We have got to stay focused where we need to make change right now.
Elizabeth Warren, thank you so much, Senator. Thanks for being with us today.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.